Hello, we're back. Hello. Let's turn this around here so I can see it. Hi, everybody. So, we're going to be painting. A few quick changes that you might have noticed on this that, again, I change things all the time. I change my mind, not very consistent. I have sanded down this little off shoot of a road right here, and I'm going to make this a dirt road. So what I did was I sanded it down. I put a little lip right there. Move this up here so you can see it, but I put a little lip where it would meet the asphalt, and then what I'll be doing is putting some gravel in there, so all of this will be filled in as a road. I wasn't happy with this border here, it didn't look right, so I'm just going to make that a dirt road that shoots off to the side into nowhere. We're going to be painting, so for this I'm going to be using these really cheap paints. These are from Walmart. They're usually about $1 each. If you wait until sometime after Christmas, they usually go down to about 50 cents a piece. That's what I pay for them. And I just stock up on them. Super cheap paint. You don't want to use good paints for this. This is a messy, watered down process, so there's no reason to be using good paints. This brand, which you can get at Hobby Lobby, is also about the cheapest thing you can get. This whole tube was $4. Is that Hobby Lobby? Yeah, Hobby Lobby. $4. I use acrylics for this. It doesn't matter really what you use. You could use old house paint if you want, whatever. You just want something cheap and easy and that you can water down one way or the other. This is going to be our base coat. Again, all of this that I'm putting in here is, for the most part, except for maybe the road, is going to be covered up by more detailed environmental stuff. Flocking, sand, dirt, whatever. This is just so we don't see white underneath it. Also, the rocks I'm going to spend special attention to, because usually whatever I paint the rocks here with, I'm going to go over with a wash, and that will be our rock. I usually don't put much more on top of the rock. All right, so I will just film this as I go. I've got my handy dandy water here. You're going to see me making a huge mess with this and changing this out quite often. I also am using some larger brushes here. These are just old brushes. Good enough. You could use a much larger brush if you wanted to. All right, well, I'm going to get going. Okay, that's pretty good with the rocks. I'm going to kind of scrub out a little bit of color here with water. So this is just pure water. And all I'm doing is just kind of scrubbing out some areas. And it's just going to bring out the ridges a little bit more. Let's bring back a little bit of detail. Sometimes the paint gets a little bit more paint than water on it. And so really all you're doing is kind of sanding off the edges here. I don't always do this, but looks like on this one we need a little bit more. We're going to go back in and touch up these edges with a little bit of white later, but this just gives it a little bit more volume. In some of these areas, especially along the rocks here, I'm just going to blend these colors a little bit. That's so if any of the the base shows through, it won't look like a paint by number book. So that it just kind of has a little bit of the color from the dirt in it. Again, probably not going to see any of it, but that way if we do, it just blends a little bit better. All about blending. And I'm keeping most of this brown color on the rocks down towards the bottom, because that's where the dirt matching is taking place. And the pavement, I'm not going to put as much water in because it's going to be, it's probably not going to be covered up by much. If you're wondering why I'm using such a small brush, when I use a bigger brush, I always seem to knock things off the diorama, rocks and parts. So I've just learned to be more patient. Little brush makes it so I don't go breaking stuff. I always ended up taking more time to fix things I broke in this step than getting the job done correctly. So okay, so it's looking pretty good. I'm going to do this little road over here, and I think we're just going to put the road's going to end up being kind of a sandy color. Okay, we've got these rocks here in the front, and I think we'll do those maybe a little different color. We'll just put some black in here. What do we use this one? There we go. I think what I'm going to do is add a little bit of this around the edges here and just let it kind of seep up into the rock. It's a good trick. For any rocks down on the ground, just let the ground color kind of seep up into the rock. It should kind of pick it up like a sponge, and then that way, whatever you butt up against this rock will kind of automatically be blended because the colors just kind of transition up into the rock. Okay, now we are going to go through these rocks and put a wash on them. So again, not going to look like this. This is pretty messy right now, but it does need to dry. I'm going to go ahead and finish up the edges, the back. Also a good trick, and right now I have some water here. Here, let me seep up this water so it doesn't spill, is to kind of turn this up, because this is how I'm going to be viewing this quite a bit, is straight on. And I can see a few little spots back in here that need addressing. Okay, and as I mentioned, I'm going to go ahead now and finish up the back and the sides. and we'll see it when it's done. Right now they're a little bit blotchy, and usually I go over just the rocks with the airbrush to try and get them to a semi-finished look. It's easier than once I get all the foam and the details on them. Again, same rules. We're still not going to see a lot of this detail that we do because we're going to cover it up, but it's really a lot easier to do it at this point than once we get all the details, because once you get grass and you know, the smaller rocks and smaller details in there, you don't want to be painting over those usually. So we'll just deal with the rocks. Now, again, I don't use the real expensive paints, but I am going to be using the airbrush, so I'm going to be using these Wicked Color paints. I also don't have a lot of natural colors for the Wicked Colors because I use those a lot on the custom cars that I do. So we're going to be mixing paints a little bit. I'm going to be using this, what brand is this? This is Hobby, oh, Vallejo. There you go. I'm going to be using the Vallejo brand. These are acrylics. So there's the airbrush I'm going to be using. There's actually another compressor down below there. That's a Spar Max, I think. That's a Spar Max compressor. I've got a few different compressors. I'm just going to use this one today. It was the last one that I put back together. Only going to be using about 15 psi for this. So real low pressure. Also, it's not particularly hot today, so it should work pretty well to get the paint out of the airbrush. You can see my airbrush right there in the front. I'll zoom in on it. That's an Iwata airbrush, and I'll give you the number on that Iwata in a second. You'll see I'm also going to use that little cap on the cup, and that's just so I don't splash things around. I usually don't use that cap, but for this I'm going to. Alright, so yeah, what I'm going to do is just spray on gray and some different colors. I'm thinking maybe blue, but we'll see how that goes, and some browns. And I'm going to clean up these rocks. They should look a lot better, so we'll give you a view of them, what they look like right now, and we'll see what they look like when they're done. Next, I'm just going to highlight the edges, and I'm going to use, if I can get it in that picture, there you go. I'm going to use a big feathered brush. This can be anything that's just got stiff bristles on it. And I need something absorbent to put the paint on because I want to get all the water or thinner out of the paint. And then I'm just going to take the paint and kind of brush it very lightly just to catch the edges. I would suggest using a light gray instead of a white to start with. So, all I'm going to do is use some of my gray that I painted on the rocks. I'm going to mix a little bit of sealer in just because it's cheap and white. So it's a little bit lighter. And I'm not going to mix it completely. That way, you can see on the brush it's kind of inconsistent. And then what we'll do is just kind of come along in here and just catch some of these edges. Okay, and I'll bring the camera down here and you can kind of see what we did there. Rocks are pretty much done, I think. I think they look pretty good. So here's where the rocks are right now. Now remember, you're going to see these rocks at about this level, so that's what I'm most concerned with. We'll roll the cars along that road. There are the other ones. So again, you'll see them at about that level. Coming out pretty good. So where we're at now is we need to start adding the smaller details. So the grass, sand, rocks, and so forth. I'll see you in the next one.